West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Good morning. Good morning to you, those far away or close by but on screen. And for those of you that are here, very cold. Could you raise your hand online if you are in a warm area of the world? Okay. Enjoy. We are not. We are in a very cold world, and we still have extracted Dennis Augustine here in the cold to speak to us. No, that's right. I wanted to say before we do our land acknowledgement, I've been at 3 meetings in the past month that included a required and obligatory land acknowledgement. And at one of them, I heard someone back a few rows say, "Oh, not this again. Oh, not this again." And I wanted to turn around and say, yeah, isn't it tedious that we have to keep reminding ourselves that we've done something terribly wrong to an awful lot of people, and at least this is an acknowledgement of it. So I wanted to say, for those of you that might not know, the land acknowledgements here at West Hill are written by West Hill folks, and they're put together carefully in a rotation basis, so we're not saying the exact same words every time. And a lot of thought and care goes into them. And so what the words are doing is inviting all of us to stand in acknowledgement. And of course, we have the view of the honor the treaties, which is probably for me one of the most significant moments when I realized it wasn't just a social issue, it was a breaking of law, of treaty, and that we're to honor it. So the land acknowledgement today, again, written by West Hill folks, because it matters so much. We begin today by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and was previously occupied by the Huron-Wendat and Seneca First Nations. This land is covered by Treaty 20 and the Williams Treaties of 1923 and lies within the lands of the Protected Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement of staggering date 1701. An indigenous citizenship law made between the Haudenosaunee, I practiced this, and Anishinaabe nations in 1701 that extends from Montreal to Fort Erie. One of the core values within the idea of a dish with one spoon is that those who use the land should not abuse the land. Individuals and groups should only take what they need from the land so that there will be a healthy, long-term, sustainable environment long before we came up with that phrase of sustainability. All participants in the agreement or treaty had the responsibility to ensure that the dish would never be empty by taking care of the land and all the living beings on it. We invite you to visit a First Nation, attend the powwow, there's a link there in the A-Blast, and stay for the great feast wherein everyone is welcomed and expected to partake of the food that is generously offered to visitors, all in good fellowship. So thank you for the folks who write that and for those of us who hold it together at this time in our gathering. So welcome, each one of you far away. Could we have a with gusto wave from the hall to the screen and from the screen to the hall? You may feel a little silly doing that, but I've heard from so many on the screen that they love it. So there we go, we have greeted each other. And we're here together because we want to be. Some of you may have been dragged to church in your childhood, didn't want to be, but we're here because we want to be. And we're here because of what we receive from one another, and we're here because of what we give and offer one another. And we do that because it matters, you matter, we matter. What we say, what we do, what we don't say, how we vote, how we don't vote, all matters. So we come here, I come here to fill up again with the tremendous importance of the values of a just society, just relationship, just families, compassion, all those things that I do really, really well and really, really not well. I'm sure you're the mixture that I am together. But we come here to comfort and encourage, hold up, refresh our commitment to those values, and have a good time being together. Donna and I are sharing the Welcome a Reader role today, and so she's coming here to do the announcements. You are invited after the readings, if you wish, to say together, may we walk in its light. The suggestion that's a piece of wisdom, something the speaker or someone has chosen to complement the theme, has cast some light, has given a truth you hadn't thought of that way, or it reminded you of something good in your life. And then we say together, may we walk, not just hear it, not just like it, not just approve it, but walk in its light. Dennis has chosen the readings this morning. There are 9 pages of them. No, actually, it was almost 9 pages. And they really give a variety of the theme that Dennis is going to share with us. Kin beyond skin, redefining the family of humanity. And I wanted to say at the start, it's our fault and our problem that it has to be redefined. We've caused the need for that. So, Dennis chose readings that reflect a deep-seated belief that kinship is not merely a social construct. We didn't make it up, though we made up a lot of part of it and failed from it, but a biological and moral imperative that extends beyond humanity to the entire family of living things on this earth. The first reading, Don and I are reading them back and forth to each other. To you. Reading number 1, the mirror of recognition. The mirror of recognition. Our first reading comes from the poet and activist Maya Angelou. Throughout her life, her work was dedicated to revealing, I love this phrase, the shared dignity of the human spirit. The shared dignity of the human spirit. She called for a radical empathy. Just another great word, radical meaning down to the roots of it all. Radical empathy meaning at my very roots I will try to feel and think and get into your reality and your joys and your pain. An intentional looking beneath the surface to find a common core. And the text that he chose, I wish that we could look into each other's faces, in each other's eyes, and see our own selves. Donna.
Reading number 2, the biological thread. Our second reading comes from the astronomer and science communicator Carl Sagan. In his exploration of the universe, Sagan frequently returned to the profound biological reality that connects every living thing on Earth. He reminds us that at the molecular level, we do not merely inhabit the world, we are of it. The text he chose. The deep similarities between any 2 different kinds of organisms, even those as different as a whale and a redwood tree, show that all life on Earth is related. We share the same molecular machinery. We are made of the same stardust. We are, in the most profound sense, a single family.
Reading number 3, the philosophy of interbeing. And that's one word, interbeing. The third reading is from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen monk who pioneered engaged Buddhism. He coined the term interbeing to show that whenever we divide the world into us and them, we ignore the reality that we are inextricably linked to the earth itself. And I remember when I first heard of the engaged Buddhism, because one of the criticisms, founded or not, about Buddhism was often that it was completely within oneself, just one's whole world inner. And finally, this and other Buddhist leaders reached out and said, we're missing an entire reality of engagement. And so engaged Buddhism became what they called that. And the text from Han is, to be is to interbe. So, to be is to interbe. You cannot just be by yourself alone. You have to interbe with every other thing. Donna.
Reading 4 is the reversal of the question. Our final reading comes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his 1963 sermon on being a good neighbor. Dr. King used the parable of the Good Samaritan to challenge us to see kinship as a choice rather than an accident of birth. The text chosen. The first question that the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then the Good Samaritan came by, and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him?
All of this offered as wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its light. 'Tis now an entire pleasure to introduce someone that has been part of our family for a very long time, close by and far away, in heart and in mind. Dennis Augustine is I'm going to read this because it's, it's not as long as the readings, Dennis, but no, it's good, and some of us don't know some of this stuff, and it's really important. Dennis is a technology entrepreneur, policy advocate, and director of Feed My Sheep Dominica. Dennis is the founder of the DX Alliance and the ANSAM platform, where he works to bridge technology and moral leadership. Has there ever been a more important time for that? However, Dennis's path to this stage is a unique one. A former minister and preacher's son, which we share together with many memories of that life and that world. I wouldn't have traded it. I loved it. From Dominica, he describes his evolution as moving from a fisher of men. Now, may I just ask if any of you grew up in that world? Do you recall the song, I Will Make You Fishers? So he's moved from a fisher of men to a collector of people. Collector of people. Today, he identifies as a secular humanist, a transition that led him to the Clergy Project, where we connect that with Joe, of course, and others. A community that supports religious leaders who no longer hold supernatural beliefs, but still hold up the values that brought that together. So that's marvelous and needed. It was through that community that Dennis met our former leader, Greta Vosper. It feels funny saying, our former leader, Greta Vosper, eventually leading him to serve as a board member here at West Hill until his return to the Caribbean to contribute to the region's digital revolution and local social initiatives. And I believe not long ago, you talked with us from there, and we met with you in your warmer climate. Please welcome back our friend, Dennis Augustine, as he shares with us his topic, Kin Beyond Skin, Redefining the Family of Humanity. Dennis.
Oh my goodness, it is an understatement to say it's really great to be here. I really wanted to make sure that Scott went through all of that because there's lots of it that, you know about me, and, but I've changed. You've changed. I mean, mostly in good ways, really, really, really good ways. Of course, Scott's as charming as ever, and Donna, and everybody's talented and wonderful. Is Martin always like this? Yeah? Just always just so, wow. That's really good. I like that. That's a good thing. And the young man and the clan back there, so impressive. I know, Glenn, we worked on that, but, we just weren't cutting it. We tried to figure it out a little bit, but the kids got it done. And then I come back and I'm, little things. They say the heart makes you grow fonder, right? Absence makes you rather grow fonder. And I think that there's things that, while I was here many years ago that were nice, but then I sit here and I just kind of soak them in, and they start to take on a new appreciation. I just really start to appreciate them a lot more. And little things like, sharing the burdens together and sharing the joy. Because you come in with burdens, somebody takes them with you, and they give you a little bit of joy, right? And you leave, everybody leaves plus, right? 1 + 1, and you got 3. How did you do that? That's what we do here, and that's one of the things I really, really love and miss a lot about you. And of course, that's what we're talking about. This, was a really great idea by Joe, and I think it was a really great idea by us to go and get people from the Clergy Project to do things like that, because, like Scott mentioned, they get it. I also really miss about this environment the chill that I get. Yeah? The chill that I used to get when I was a young minister at Revival Time Tabernacle down in Downsview. I used to preach the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the church would shake. But I used to get some chills back then. And, there's not a lot of places you get the same sort of chills without feeling kind of silly, right? Without kind of feeling that you got to give up some of your intellectual integrity. You got to pretend that, things aren't difficult and the world isn't, gray. But here I can get those chills and still, just keep my integrity and feel good about it. And be around people who I know share my values. And not in the sort of a way where we say, we have these values that you have to, which is a way to exclude people. Share my values in the way that say, at least these things we agree on. I'm sure I spent some time with some good friends who are on the other side of the political spectrum, and because of resources I gained here, I'm able to deal with them a lot better than I would otherwise, right? Because I forget about, some of the other things that we do not share in common. But the reason why they're still my friends is we do share a few things that were more important. And I keep that in mind. And I learned that from you. So I love you. So we're supposed to be talking about, I'm rambling on, and I started my timer. I should try to make sure it stays on, because former charismatic ministers and microphones on a Sunday morning. Truth. So I'm looking forward to this. I haven't done this in so long, and it is going to be so much fun for me. But, Scott, you started off, you talked about the land acknowledgement a little bit, and that is something that actually I also really did miss a little bit. We started doing it in some of the parts of the Caribbean, including Dominica, which I really think is great as well. And there's a couple ways you can look at the land acknowledgement, and there is, of course, the necessary reminder that, it is our home on as my father would have rephrased it, on the natives' land, on indigenous land. And so That is something that we should be always acknowledging. But I want to reframe that a little bit just before I get into the meat of it, because it occurred to me as I was sitting there and the Spirit moved, as Scott went and spoke about it, air quotes for those on the transcript, that it's also a reminder that this is land bought with blood, right? That's what it's really. It's the price we paid. Somebody paid for this land, and who? Really good, decent, innocent, accepting people, hardworking people who loved the land, and they paid for it with their blood. And so it behooves us to love the land, because a high price was paid for it. And in that way, it's also a really positive thing to say. This is precious land. Like we talk about our freedom. People paid a high price for it. And so we value it every single day. That's what you love, things that you pay a high price for. And so I think that is also the case with African History Month, in which we happen to be in. Some people are trying to wipe that from American history, from world history. And I dare say that it's not meant to feel, and I believe that how I want to look at it, is not meant to make anybody feel badly, but rather to say that this is the price that we paid for living in like one of the best times and places on earth to live in. I've lived in the Caribbean for the last little while, but I'm so very proud to be Canadian. Right? When I see how we are managing this, from the left and the right, yes, of our political spectrums, between the 50-yard lines, as far as the rest of the world is concerned. And so I think that, we have to be proud of that too, and we should love definitely you are so lovable. I gave a number of reasons for that. I say that we also love the country that we built, and that we understand that it was bought with a very precious price. So, who do we love? I love you. I love my country. I love the Caribbean. I'm obsessed about all of those sorts of things, and so I guess in a way, my apologies to my wife for my infidelity. I'm cheating on her with the mission, with this love for all of those things, and that is also a steep price to pay, right? And so shout out to my wife. I'm going to get me some brownie points right now. Shout out to my wife, because she could not be here today, and quite often she does not, because this stuff costs her so much. She doesn't like it so much, but I shout out to her to let her know that even when we're doing this, I do think about her. And if we're talking about love, who else? My wife. I'd be remiss if I started without talking about her. Okay? So, that's all the stuff I had to say before I got to thanks. So we're gathered here to talk about love, and specifically we've been asked to wrestle with the question of, that might sound simple, but it's actually really a diagnostic, I think, for our survival at this time. Who are we supposed to love? In a world that it just works, like they make it just work. I love these people on the tech. In a world that feels increasingly like high-tech, like a high-tech coliseum, like an arena. It's more than just a Sunday sentiment. It's a matter for civilizational survival. If a historian 1,000 years from now was to do a diagnostics, an autopsy on our modern age, they're going to find, at this very moment, a very serious contradiction. On the one hand, he's on it. On the one hand, they'll see a technological God. And but they'll see a technological God. We have technology for all intents and purposes that are almost divine compared to that which we had a few hundred years ago. We can edit our genes with CRISPR. We can create ourselves literally by now. We have telescopes that look back into the dawn of time, the dawn of the universe, the nurseries of our stars. And now we're summoning artificial intelligences out of silicon. So we have the technology of Apollo and the sociology of a caveman. We're running around like warring species, warring tribes in a thicket, and swinging primates, clubs, but only today the clubs are nuclear tipped and algorithmic. So we have a fundamental hardware, software kind of disjunction going on. We're running on 21st century godlike technology with Stone Age emotional intelligence. So, I think that we're in a moment, what I like to call the great fragmentation. It's a moment where we are starting to lose the narratives that used to help us create these wonderful nations that we live, the modern era, the rules-based era, the liberal era of democracy that we have created together. We're starting to lose a grip of the narratives that held all of that together. And it was made even worse by something I like to call first contact. In 2005, we made first contact, and no, I'm not saying that aliens landed on the planet. They didn't arrive in a mothership. They arrived in news feeds. See, our first contact with a non-human intelligence was the algorithmic curation of your news feed, which actually knew more about your behavior than your parents, your wife, or you even did. I say that, I've been doing technology for about 27 years, so, and I started out in digital marketing systems. So I have to take some responsibility for the monster that we have created, and I'm sorry. But we're going to get to what we're going to do about it later. So we were promised this great global village, but what we got instead was surveillance capitalism, we got vulnerability, and now we are getting ready for second contact, and we haven't even cleaned up the mess from the first contact. So the second contact really now is not just that with algorithms, but also with a non-human intelligence that also generates synthetic realities. And we're heading towards what really you want to call an epistemic collapse, when you don't know what's true anymore. How do you build a society when you cannot agree on what is true? So we have this incredible narrative division, and it is being run on some very, very powerful machinery. Marshall McLuhan, this great Canadian philosopher, he talked about the message being, the medium being the message, and how tightly intertwined those two things are. I don't know if he knew how prophetic he was, because that is so much more true today than it ever was in his day. But I think that in order to get ourselves that answer, back to the theme of who to love. So in order to understand who to love out there, you have to start to understand who to love in here. Right? We have to start to deconstruct the world in here as well. And let's try to escape this little coliseum of ours for a while, because there really is. Now, I'm not being all matrixy on you, but in a very real sense, and I think you all understand in which way I hope you mean is true, that we have, since 2005, been slowly kind of plugged into a little bit of a matrix of what's not real. And in order to really escape it, we got to start to change our mindset, the things that have been programmed into us. So let's have a little bit of a walk inward, shall we? To get out of the arena, I think we have to disabuse ourselves of the assumption that there's a pilot in the cockpit of our head. Somebody is like a little CEO. The neuroscientists call him that little man, that little homunculus. They've been looking for him for 50 years, and they still haven't found him. My wife will probably say, especially in your head, Dennis. But there's some very simple things that actually show this to be kind of true. There's this latency gap that happens at something called the Libet factor, right? In the 1980s, Benjamin Libet discovered that your brain prepares to move almost half a second. It exhibits this readiness potential, a full 550 milliseconds more than, I guess, half a second, right? I'm doing it's 1,000 seconds and milliseconds in a... Yes, good. Fellow geeks are helping me out. A full 550 milliseconds before you consciously know that you decided to move. Right? Because the readiness potential triggers, and then the part of your brain that plans it out consciously makes up a reason for this, and then you move. And so they've shown this just through neuroimaging. You see, your brain, your conscious brain is not the CEO. It's more like the press secretary. Right? Michael Gazzaniga calls it the left brain interpreter. You've just been handed a press release, and then you've been told to go out there and spin it so that you can tell the people, we meant to do that all along. It actually seems like the job of a press secretary these days, doesn't it? So what you're doing all the time is you're writing fan fiction about your own behavior. So this, I believe, is the root of our division. Okay? We have to start to exhibit a little bit of grace when we start to challenge people. Because even we have a little press secretary that gave us all of this wonderful, cohesive story that we have in our heads. So when we're attacking their logic, we're not just attacking them, we're attacking their story. Their press secretary has created to define their very existence. We're attacking that ego, and goodness gracious, it would rather lie or die than to admit that it wasn't in control. Have a little grace. Now, let's see if we can catch our press secretary off guard just a little bit. All right? Okay. So I'm going to ask you, it's totally optional. I swear I won't mess with your head while you've got your eyes closed, if you do. Quiet your mind and close your eyes. And imagine that you are at the entrance of your mind, like a cat, at a mouse hole, waiting for your next thought. Don't try to create one. We're going to take a few seconds and we're going to wait for the mouse to come out of the hole. Did you choose that next thought? You can open your eyes. For people who do that experiment a little bit, you should do it a few times. You'll discover that no, you didn't. It just appeared. So you're not the thinker. You're the space in which the thought occurs, the awareness that witnesses the bubble rising in the glass. So it's kind of like this, and I'm going to wax a little poetical, metaphysical, depending on which way you want to look at it. It's like, you got two bulbs, they got different coatings, and, one's square, one's round, and they're connected to one source, and the source there, and that filament, produces internally that same light. It's going to look different on the outside. It might have a different skin. It might have a different cultural heritage. It might be young. It might be old. It might be dashingly handsome, like Scott. But it's that same light of consciousness. It's identical. And if you want to challenge me and say, well, Dennis, that's just you're talking about something ontologically that isn't true. Well, yes, but life is about patterns, you see. That's what DNA is about, right? Scott is Scott, even though there's not too many cells in Scott. That was the Scott that even I knew a few years ago, right? But that same pattern of Scott exists, and so we're talking about the pattern of consciousness, the shape of it, in so much that when I think and you think, in so much that we have machines that different people can use to move limbs with their minds because the wiring of consciousness is so similar, right? So the wiring is so similar, it's so structurally equivalent that I think I can talk about it as being from the same sort of a source, the same thing. What does that say to me? Okay, so let's get a little bit more concrete. Maybe you just don't like, cognitive psychology and the subjectivity of it because, that's the only way you can study psychology, by the way, is subjectively. But you don't like that because you have some kind of science prejudice. You're more like one of those physicists. Okay. Some may say that's, too poetic. Let's get to the biological reality. The reality is radical kinship. The Human Genome Project showed that any two humans are 99.9% similar in their DNA. So many wars, so many border policies, so much hate on a rounding error of about 0.1%. It's like twins fighting because they've been tricked that they were strangers. That's a sliver. But, and even scientists will tell us that there is more genetic variation sometimes within a group than between groups. Now, you say, okay, but definitely I look different than you for sure, right? Easy for me and my sister over here to say so in this place. But if we were to go from the equator all the way up to Norway, take a walk, and wait till we see the place where definitely one race turned into another, you'd get all the way to Norway, and you wouldn't find a nice, fine, clear line. Why is that? Why do you think that is? It's the sun. Nice and simple. It's the sun and the shape of the earth and the equator and all of that kind of stuff. And so, the skin color aspect of things is actually more like a biological solar panel. It's a response to how much vitamin D I need, right? In so much that, somebody from one of those whole countries in Somalia or someplace could just be as genetically similar to somebody from, London, England. More so than somebody from their own ethnicity. Genetics is an odd thing. One of the things I just loved, again, about that time when we did that share the joy thing, right? When I talked about walking out with more than I came in, there's actually genetic wiring that makes that true as well. There's these things in the brain called mirror neurons. They're like the Wi-Fi signal, right? So if I was to smash my thumb with a nail, and they recorded, you would cringe. And when they recorded the signals in your brain, the same centers that lit up in my brain when my thumb was smashed lit up in yours. Turned down, but they lit up in yours. You felt it, right? Some of the same chemicals rushed through your body, right? When we shared the joy in those wonderful sweaters, some of the same joy that they got when they got these sweaters was transferred to my account. Thanks for the deposit. So that's another reason why I love you. This is just pure genius at a time when we need it so much. This abundant blessing. In this abundant blessing? We share it. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I was hoping so. I was hoping so. Come on. Don't make me turn it up because I'm used to an amen corner. I'm too much of a fan of Carl Sagan to miss any opportunity to refer to him in anything that loosely comes close to it. Look at the stars. That's where our physics even begins. So if you want to talk about the tangible, material connection between us, every atom of iron in your blood, every bit of calcium in your teeth was cooked in the heart of a dying star billions of years ago. As Carl Sagan once said, we are that star stuff. Or, if you could less elegantly put it, we are that walking, talking, recycled star guts. We are the universe itself reorganizing itself to look at itself, to say, I am. I am. And we are also at a place where we know about the mycelium, the wood wide web, that tells us that there's fungal networks that bind all the trees. They share nutrients, they warn each other, they prepare for disaster. There is this mutuality in nature. We've heard about the survival of the fittest, but it is not just that. Survival is not just about competition. It's also about mutuality. And that's why the empathy imperative is not just something that is, it is something that is natural and is imperative. You see, the love for the other is not, it's not just charity. It's self-recognition. And at this time, I think, in the 2026, passive empathy is something that we do not have the luxury of at this point in time. I really do think that the world has changed substantially from the time that I was here until today. That's why I've changed so much, because I've seen it, and it's a necessity that we do everything we can with all of the skills that we can to make a difference now, because who else is going to do it but people like you and me? So it's not a passive empathy. It's a luxury. We can't afford it. We have to move from survival of the fittest to survival of the nurtured. And in order to do that, we have to recognize what's broken. And I saw myself a broken pipeline when I was born in the volcanic soil of Dominica. I was raised here in Canada. I did sprinklers at Don Cherry's lawn in Mississauga. Oscar Peterson called me son once when I walked through his house. That's my claim to fame. I say this to Scott because he plays the piano. I was forged in the multicultural tapestries of this country, but I went to the Caribbean. I journeyed as a Christian minister for a while. I got into tech. I saw this broken pipeline. I saw, with regards to the technology, that the Caribbean was a place where we had a lot of brilliant talent, and it escaped. And maybe we could plug the leaky bucket, and I could be useful to those things. And I think that's something I wanted to be a part of. I also understood at that point in time that that divisive narrative that is causing this epistemic collapse, this great danger that is upon us right now, is something that is being driven digitally. So I'm like, yes, I can use that, because I know something about that. I helped to create it, and maybe we can help to fix it. And so what I did, I'm talking about what I did. We're going to talk about what you can do in a minute. What I did, we've gone in the DX Alliance. We've been working on a platform called Ensemble. It's a Creole word. It means together. It's what I like to call a community operating system. It's something really to make sure that the people of the Caribbean own their identity. I believe that digital sovereignty starts with you and you owning your identity. Be very careful of your privacy. All right? This is a really important thing. No matter how objective you think you are, okay? No matter how discerning you think you are, watch what you consume. Watch what you like. Watch what you let the algorithms tell you. Watch the channels and the company you keep, like your parents and mine told me to. Because what we put in is what comes out, ultimately. That's what makes up the space in our minds. If we know anything about ourselves from what I said earlier, we'll know that those thoughts that come up in your minds, they arise there. One of the comforting things that Gazinga did say, though, because it might sound that he was poo-pooing free will. He also said, well, I do know. I'm not sure if we have free will, he said, but, I do know we have free won't. Yeah. So we have more of an ability to be that auditor of those things than we do, because of those things that arise in the back of the head. Yes, all of the things that you actually do arose in the back of your head, but not everything that arose in the back of your head you did. And you know what I mean. So, guard that. And our psalm is really, our way of doing something practical about the platforms that have helped to build this infrastructure of division. And I figure we need to build an infrastructure of connection instead. But that's me. That's what I did. What can you do? That's my path. What's your path? For me, I used to call myself a fisher of men when I was a minister. Now I call myself a collector of people, and I think there's a little bit of a distinction there. And I think there's something also that we can keep in mind as we, I hope, think about spreading this thing that we have done such wonderful R&D on, and you have just continued to make so much better over the years. So it's very important, I think, this small distinction. I used to be a fisher of men, and I think that there was a small problem with that. Not that we didn't have some good stuff, some baby in that bathwater, but being a fisher of men is very transactional. You want to convert and catch people. It's a slightly different agenda. Being a collector of people is about making space for people, okay? To hold a space for you. So, to build a community rather than a congregation per se. Yeah, it is a collector of people who says, I am the space in which you are welcome. And I feel welcome. How do you do it practically for yourself? What does that mean as you explore what you can do individually? I just mentioned really what I think we can do collectively, but you individually, you got to do your bit as well. I think it's 3 parts. First of all, see it. See the kinship. I'm amazed when you talk to somebody. You've all had conversations where you've talked to somebody for a while, and you look into their eyes. Like almost every time I'd even glance at Martin, he's got a thing. Really, when you just look at somebody in the eyes and you see something not just familiar in terms of, but familiar in, that's the same light. It's the same light. I can't even put a word in it sometimes. But see it. Please see it. I've given you any number of reasons to understand it. And believe me, they see it too. Mirror neurons. So see the kinship. Practice that. When the algorithm tries to make you hate a stranger, remind yourself, that's just another point of view of me. Identify your own tools. I do tech. I like to run my mouth. My daddy was a preacher man, so I like to do those things. Maybe for you, it's, in some cases, technology, music, and your ability to love on people or just to listen. And then thirdly, build a bridge practically, put it into work. So identify an area that you've got some passion for, something that you love, where you see the need, where you feel the hurt, and see how you can take what you got to help doing that thing. And what does that do? It helps us to start to build an infrastructure of connection, because there is a very active infrastructure of disconnection and division. So if we would like the world not to suck, we better get to work. That first step, I think, in that three-part thing, see the kinship part, that just involves the look. I'm going to encourage you to, as you go out into the week, to practice the look. I don't mean giving people crazy, creepy looks, okay? Please don't do that. Because I'd be like, these Westville people, they're all... No, I mean, like when you come across people, when you see the stranger on the TTC, your coworker who gets under your skin, or even that person in your family that you dislike, look past the content of that, and look past their politics and their habits, and look for the observer in them. And if you look long enough, you'll see the same light. Yeah. So, just a last word, and there is no. We're effectively in a universe that's looking at itself, in my mind, through 8 billion plus different angles, different points of view. We got here through compassion. We came this far through compassion. It's the thing that is going, it's our superpower. You put a human being in a cage with a chimpanzee, and the human will have a very bad day every time. And yet, here we are, on top of with this awesome responsibility for this planet. We were the ones who were supposedly smart enough to be given the reins for it. And how did we accomplish that? By cooperating, by having some compassion for each other. So let's recognize our superpower. And let's also recognize some other superpowers that we've created. And so that we're not in a disadvantage in this little arms race of ours, let's start to use the one for the other. It's how we survived in Savannah. That's how we're going to survive the algorithm. Just remember, there is no them. It's only us. Offered as wisdom for the journey. Thank you.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.